But you know who wasn't happy to form an alliance with France? Britain. They would have been quite happy to just sit on the sidelines and leave Europe to do European things, but Germany forced their hand. As you know, Britain joined World War I to defend Belgium neutrality, something they'd guaranteed since they invented Belgium in 1830. However, war with Germany was always going to happen, and something that everybody in Britain knew was coming, because Germany had challenged the Royal Navy. Now, if they'd challenged the French or the Russian Navy, this would have been no big deal, but challenging the Royal Navy was practically an act of war, because the Royal Navy was the only thing keeping Britain safe. Sure, the British Army was a thing, but it was nothing compared to the armies of other European nations. The Royal Navy was what made Britain a world superpower instead of some colony of another European empire. The might of Napoleon had been stopped by the Royal Navy. The Spanish Empire, at the peak of its powers, had to give up on its invasion of England because of the Royal Navy, and it was by the might of the Royal Navy that Britain maintained its empire. And Germany knew it. They saw the big and beautiful Royal Navy, and Britain's even bigger and beautifuler empire, and realised that if they had a navy just as big as Britain's, then they could have an empire just as grand as Britain's. But for a very long time, the German Navy couldn't challenge the Royal Navy. It was just way too big. So big that Germany would have to bankrupt herself 6 times over to be able to afford a fleet the same size as Britain's. No, Germany would need a miracle if they were ever going to catch up with the Royal Navy. And in 1906, a miracle was exactly what they got, when the Royal Navy launched HMS Dreadnought, making every other ship in the world obsolete in an instant. So now, instead of the Royal Navy being 70 ships ahead, they were only 1 Dreadnought ahead. Cue a massive naval arms race that forced Britain to drop the 2-power standard, changing it instead to having 60% more ships than Germany. And it was such a humiliating thing for the Royal Navy to have to drop this, they never officially did it. They just did it off the books behind closed doors. Now, Britain was always going to win the arms race. In fact, there was a point in the arms race where German ports were at capacity, and British ports were making ships for the Royal Navy, as well as ships for foreign navies, and they were still screaming at the government to give them more work. But despite a long-term victory being almost inevitable, Britain couldn't risk it, and was forced into the worst situation any British government could have imagined: forming an alliance with France. So Germany, in the space of a few years, managed to make Britain a nation that would have physically left Europe if they could, to a nation that was now involved in all European affairs and always taking the side opposite to the one Germany was on. And in the end, Germany never even came close to beating the Royal Navy, so they made an enemy of the most powerful nation on earth for nothing.